Finally, I would like to talk just very briefly now about the origin of AI ethics. Happily, when I say brief, I mean brief. The origin of AI ethics traces back. We're not going to do the entire origin, but we're going to trace back to a critical moment, which was the year 2019. In 2019, that was the year that the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI was published by the European Union. At that time, AI ethics was broken into two different vectors or two different directions. In one direction, many people who were doing AI ethics had taken the following strategy. They said, let's look at a similar field, biotechnical ethics or biomedical ethics, and see what kinds of principles they use. And in 1985, Beauchamp and Childress, in their Principles of Biomedical Ethics, set the standard for that discussion. The standard discussion then and now for biomedical ethics constrains this language to about four principles. In the biomedical world, in hospitals, for doctors, we ask about autonomy, we ask about non-maleficence, that's do no harm, we ask about justice, and we ask about beneficence. Translating those principles from biomedical discussion to technological discussion, we got autonomy, prevention of harm, about the same thing, fairness, which is a way of talking about justice, and explicability, or explain what we call explainability. As a footnote, explainability is not a word in English. Explicability is the word, but it makes no sense. Everyone just says explainability, so now it's a word. Um, so in 2019, many people who were doing AI ethics were just using the principles from biomedical ethics. You can see adjusting them slightly and looking at what was happening in AI. However, about that same time, about 2019, more or less, there was significant growth in the way artificial intelligence was affecting our lives. AI was happening in a lot more places and doing a lot more things, as opposed to biomedical ethics, which more or less continues to be constrained to hospitals and research centers. AI was starting to be everywhere. Recommenders and other kinds of human decisions and human interactions. So, because artificial intelligence was beginning to proliferate through experience, a second group of individuals said that what we need are a set of principles for AI, which are more specifically crafted to the technology of information engineering, and which in some sense just completely break free from the biomedical ethics. Or stated slightly differently, this group proposed that we should just start over. Let's just get some new ethics for AI, different from what we had for biomedical ethics. And curiously, in the 2019 Ethics Guidelines for Trustworthy AI, published by the EU, both those, of course, what do you do if you're a bureaucrat and you have a disagreement? You just use both, right? They put both in, and then you can see that they called the four ethical principles, those that were adopted from the biomedical research field, and then they called seven key requirements, and these seven principles: diversity, fairness, human agency, that's autonomy, social well-being. These seven requirements, these were the ethical principles that were being developed independently, sort of from the ground up, for this new world of expanding AI tools and operations. Now, flash forward to today, and that second side has won the debate. AI is sufficiently deeply embedded in so many things we do, and it is sufficiently distinct from the world of research, biomedical research, and applied biomedicine, which is hospitals and clinical medical well-being. The world of AI now is everywhere. Right? It decides the movies we see on Netflix. It decides whether we will get a loan when we apply to buy a home. It decides how traffic is regulated in Stockholm. It decides how spaceships fly. It decides whether or not, unfortunately, to some degree, decides whether or not missiles will be launched. There's almost no part of our existence, from the most trivial, selecting a movie or a restaurant or having a date, being recommended, right, these things by a tool, or more significant things. And there's almost no part in our quotidian life now, which is not either directly or at least indirectly touched by artificial intelligence. So, because of that breadth of the technology, it does seem as though it makes sense to develop a new set of principles from the ground up. That's what the community has decided to do. And most people now, almost all people now who do AI ethics, are interested in principles which are very similar to those that we will be discussing in this seminar. So that's a very brief history of AI ethics. But let's go back as a quick review to the main ideas. Um, Ethics is a language. It's a way of speaking with its own vocabulary. The specific language of ethics is the vocabulary of human values. That's things that have value on their own, things that we want because we want them, not because we want them to get something else like money. And then we call that process, frequently we call it evaluation, the process of giving value to things. So that was the core of what I wanted to talk about here. Then we looked very quickly at an example of how that worked in the information engineering classroom. And we asked about human freedom, privacy, fairness. Those are ethical kinds of discussions that we can have. And they're different, we said, from the kinds of discussions you might have about the technical qualities. How does the tool work? How do the algorithms translate brain waves into attention? How does what kind of sensors does the headpiece have to grasp these electronic waves? All those are technical questions. Then we asked, well, okay, if we know what ethics is about, it's the language of these principles, then how many principles should we have to talk about? And we said sort of 9, 11, 7, something in there. And then we looked at the history of AI ethics, and specifically we identified 2019 as a fairly important year where we began to develop independently a set of principles that were compatible with and consummate to the challenge of understanding in ethical terms this new world of artificial intelligence and emotion artificial intelligence that we are entering